Namaste. I'm Dr. Utkarsh Modi, and today we'll be talking about consciousness. Let's just start the slideshow. So, this topic, consciousness, is a part of Unit 6 Allied Sciences, General Psychology. I shall be going through an introduction of consciousness. I'll be talking about the topographical model of the mind. I'll also briefly cover the dimensions of consciousness, the altered states of consciousness, and the drugs altering consciousness. So, what is consciousness? It has been an abstract concept which has evolved over time. Philosophers such as Rene Descartes focused on the subjective experience of the mind. He said that I think, therefore I am. So he basically equated consciousness to thoughts. But over time, many textbooks have evolved and defined consciousness. The current accepted definition is that consciousness is the individual's awareness of external and internal stimuli, that is, of events in the environment and of body sensations, memories, and thoughts. So, consciousness basically involves two things: one is monitoring, and second is controlling. Monitoring is basically monitoring ourselves and our environment so that percepts, memories, and thoughts are represented in awareness. So, integral to this monitoring is our sensory system, which includes the sense of touch, smell, taste, vision, hearing, etc. These sensory systems send signals to the brain about all the stimuli surrounding us. But it is practically impossible for our brain to focus on all the stimuli at the same time, which might potentially cause an information overload. Hence, our attention is called selective attention. For example, if we are hungry, we cannot concentrate on studying. Or if we experience pain, we push our thoughts out of the consciousness. The second part of consciousness is controlling ourselves and our environment so that we are able to initiate and terminate behavioral and cognitive activities. Now, the concept of consciousness was highlighted by Dr. Freud. He, in his seminal work on the model of mind, he divided the mind into three parts: conscious part, pre-conscious part, and the unconscious part. He said that it is a dynamic system with flow of information from one part to the other. So the first conscious part is the part where perceptions coming from the outside world or from within the body are brought into awareness. The second part is the pre-conscious part, which is composed of mental events and processes that can be brought into conscious awareness by the act of focusing attention. So although most people are not aware of what is going on subconsciously in their mind, but if they focus on it, then they can bring those thoughts to awareness. So to reach conscious awareness, contents of the unconscious mind, which is the lowermost part of the mind, must become linked with words or uh, memories and thus become pre-conscious. Once it's in the pre-conscious mind, if we focus on it, then it comes into the conscious mind. So pre-conscious system also serves to maintain the repressive barrier, and it censors unacceptable wishes and desires. Now the third part is the unconscious part. Its mental contents are kept from reaching conscious level by using the force of censorship or repression. It is mainly related to instinctual drives, which were predominantly sexual or self-preservative as per Freud. He said that the wishes were limited to seeking fulfillment and governed by the pleasure principle. The contents of unconscious can only become conscious by passing through the censorship of preconscious. Now, currently, these views are deemed to be reductionist, and this interpretation of the concept of mind and consciousness has evolved. He himself improved upon his work by going on to defining a structural model of mind, wherein he retained these conscious, pre-conscious, or unconscious levels, but added the concepts of id, ego, and superego. Apart from the uh, apart from the structure of mind, there are other dimensions of consciousness which have been discovered. The level of consciousness on these dimensions, they exist on a spectrum, by which I mean that they exist from one level of severity to the other extreme severity. And impairment of any of these dimensions leads to problems with consciousness. One dimension, as we already discussed, it being a part of the mind, from conscious, pre-conscious to unconscious. The other dimension is from vigilance to sleep. Vigilance is taken to mean the faculty of deliberately remaining alert when otherwise one might be drowsy or asleep. So it's not a uniform state, but it fluctuates. There are a lot of factors which inside the individual that promote vigilance, which includes interest, anxiety, extreme fear, or enjoyment, whereas boredom encourages drowsiness. The situation in the environment and the way the individual perceives that situation also affects the position on the vigilance drowsiness axis. For example, you are more vigilant in unfamiliar surroundings and less so at home or at a comfortable environment. Now, the third dimension is from lucidity to clouding. So, lucidity is basically clarity of thought on a particular topic. A person's sensorium, which is the total awareness of all internal and external sensations, may be clear or clouded. So, uh, of course, all the different dimensions of consciousness are not completely unrelated, they are interlinked. Basically, unless a person is fully awake, he cannot be lucid. After lucidity comes clouding of consciousness. So, clouding is the lesser degree of consciousness wherein the alertness reduces. It further progresses into drowsiness, stupor, and coma. Coma basically means complete loss of consciousness. I will be discussing these terms later on. Now, as we mentioned, consciousness may be considered as a continuum from full alertness to coma. In that sense, consciousness is regarded as quantitative. Full alertness is maximum quantity of consciousness and coma is absolute lack of consciousness. So let's define these terms. First is clouding of consciousness. This represents the lesser stages of impairment of consciousness with deterioration of in thinking, attention, perception, and memory, and usually drowsiness and reduced awareness of the environment. Then what is drowsiness? So as a persistent state, this is the next level of progressive impairment, wherein the patient is awake but will drift into sleep if left without sensory stimulation. The highest level in quantitative lowering of consciousness is coma. So if a drowsy patient will at least respond to stimulation, uh, but again drifts back into sleep. Whereas in coma, the patient is continuously unconscious and will not respond to any stimulation. Now, if we talk about the qualitative changes of consciousness, these are not on the level of alertness to drowsiness or sleep or coma. This will be changes in the character of consciousness. One such syndrome is delirium. So it is a non-specific syndrome, and it is characterized by disturbances of consciousness, attention, perception, thinking, memory, psychomotor behavior, emotion, and the sleep-wake cycle. So in delirium, the patient need not be drowsy. He can be alert also, or he can be drowsy. It keeps fluctuating. Other term which is related to qualitative changes of consciousness is confusion. Now, confusion is very imprecisely defined. It is referring to subjective symptoms and objective signs which indicate loss of capacity for clear and coherent thought. Other areas where we see qualitative changes of consciousness is in sleep disorders, in twilight state or stupor. Now, certain other terminologies associated with consciousness are automaticity. Automaticity is habituation of responses that initially require conscious attention. For example, learning to drive a car. Initially, when you're learning to drive a car, you need to pay conscious attention to your to how much pressure you're applying on the accelerator, when to change the gear, when to apply brakes. But after you master that skill, you do not have to consciously apply attention to that activity. It is quite similar to playing an instrument as well. So those responses have become automatic. The second aspect is dissociation. Now, dissociation is basically a break of association or split between the thoughts and actions. For example, when a person is faced with a stressful situation, we may temporarily put it out of our minds in order to function effectively. When bored, we may lapse into daydreams. So these are mild examples of dissociation, which involves dissociating one part of the consciousness from another. More extreme examples of dissociations are demonstrated by pathological conditions like dissociative identity disorder or multiple personality, which both are rare psychological disorders. Another example of dissociation would be when you are in a very stressful situation or you've suffered a significant injury or trauma, you tend to dissociate the pain which you are feeling from the current scenario. You will not experience the pain immediately. First, you will have the flight, or fear response. You will try to get to safety, and then once you are safe, the the sensations of pain come into your mind. So both of the above conditions can be physiological, as in they need not be abnormal. They are also seen in normal conditions, but they are also seen in pathological or abnormal disorders. Now, apart from the internal processes which alter consciousness, there are certain things like drugs which can also alter consciousness. These drugs are broadly divided into three groups. First is the depressants. Depressants are drugs which reduce the central nervous system activity. They will depress the ability of the brain to regulate consciousness. Uh, it will reduce your vigilance and wakefulness. The common examples include alcohol, opioids, benzodiazepines, and barbiturates. Opioids, you might know commonly know it as heroin, morphine. Benzodiazepines are basically drugs which are used for as sleeping pills. The second group of drugs is stimulants. They are the opposite of depressants. They will increase CNS activity. Example, cocaine, amphetamines, caffeine. They will make a person more vigilant, more alert, and more active. The third group is psychedelics or hallucinogens. As I told you, there are different dimensions. One will be the quantitative change and the other will be qualitative change. The first two group of drugs, depressants and stimulants, predominantly cause variation in the quantitative nature of consciousness. They will either make you more vigilant or they will put you to sleep. But psychedelics or hallucinogens, they will alter the perception of stimuli. That is, there is a qualitative change in consciousness. It changes how you perceive your environment. For example, LSD, marijuana, phencyclidine. These tend to cause hallucinations, uh, and also it can cause variations in how you perceive colors, how you perceive sound, which gives a different experience of consciousness. Now, this was a very brief understanding of the various concepts related to consciousness. I will end the topic here. Thank you.